So before we start, I just want to touch on something real quick, and I want to thank you. Last night, Ev sends us the podcast, the preview for episode 2 that's coming out today, and while I'm watching that, I'm at my parents' house. My mom's on vacation, my brother's away, I'm taking care of my dad. He's pretty independent for the most part, but he needs a lot of help at the same time. I'm getting frustrated with him, just doing some things that were just irking me a little bit. And I'm watching the podcast, and it was at the point where I was discussing how his health and his stroke, when it first happened, how it affected me and how it affects me today. And it brought me right back to just being thankful that, as frustrating as the situation was last night, I'm thankful just to be able to experience that situation no matter the capacity. So you don't realize it, and I said it last week, how much you impact my life just being able to talk. And watching that video or that episode and us having that exchange, me and you just person to person, and seeing it replayed for me at that time, snapped me right out of it. That's great. And I went from being a little aggravated or agitated to instantly thankful just to have the moment with him.
Awesome.
No matter what it was.
Awesome. And we can get back to when you told me to make sure that I appreciate my dad. Like, we got to do a better job taking our own advice.
100%.
And like, it's easy to give advice to others, but like actually taking that advice. So you told me last week when I was telling you how much my dad has impacted me, you were saying, I hope you appreciate that. Well, now you got to take your own advice. And yeah, it might be a little bit stressful that he's making all these trips to the bathroom and things are a little bit difficult. But like you said, man, he's still here.
Yeah.
He's still Superman.
And you know, the one thing, and I've said it a lot lately, because a lot of people, my dad's at work all the time. A lot of people see him, and he still has a lot of wherewithal. And sometimes I actually think he's fucking with me, because he'll have such amazing moments and such great days, followed up by a not so great moment or a not so great day. And it's almost like he's just trying to get a rise out of me. But I've said it to people a few times lately. There's nothing short of my kids that I wouldn't give for one more day with my father pre-stroke. There are so many things I want to say to him, so many experiences that I want to tell him about, so much that I want to enjoy his time. But last night, when I was getting a little frustrated with him, 5 trips back and forth to the bathroom, whatever it was, as stupid as it sounds, just certain things, I'm getting frustrated, but watching us discuss it, it just instantly reminded me how thankful I am for him to still be here.
For sure.
And I really want to emphasize how thankful I am for that moment.
For sure. When I was sitting there watching last night's episode, Carter went to bed early. Mason was upstairs, and I was downstairs at Rowan. And every time I put on Coco Melon, it was like the wrong one. And like, I'm sitting there watching, talking to you guys, because you could watch YouTube and text. I didn't realize that till last night. So I was like multitasking like crazy. But, Rowan kept saying, and like some of the things we were talking about, I was just like, I took a deep breath, and I was just like, fine, whichever Coco Melon one you want, like, we'll get there. I'm not going to let you scream and get me rattled anymore. I'm going to try not to, at least.
Then our episode had the same impact on both of us in different situations.
100%.
Hopefully it impacted some other people or impacts other people in the future like it did for us.
For sure. We were both talking to Lex Knapp yesterday, and Lex only has, I think his daughter might be like 5 months or so. I could be a little bit off, but, he's got a little baby girl, and she's only a few months old. He watched the podcast, and he's a new dad. And a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, he was easily able to relate to. So that's really why we're getting on here for an hour a week, is to try to help that one guy who feels like he's on an island or, doesn't necessarily have the answers on what it takes to be a parent and a father. And we've been getting some really good feedback from the ladies too, which I think surprised us. It doesn't have to be just a single mom either, but I think the benefit for the ladies to hear about our stories we were talking about was they get a little bit of an inside track on the guy now, because it's not like guys are over there crying and saying like everything that's wrong on a daily basis. Like, they're probably just looking at them and maybe being quiet and saying, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Like we talked about in the past. Like, I saw one of my neighbors, blue collar dude, iron worker, he busts his tail. And I was walking by with my kids. We were playing tag outside with like one of the neighbor's kids. And I walked by him, like, he's usually pretty like friendly and stuff with me talking. And it just seemed like he was carrying the weight on his shoulders a little bit. Like he saw us kind of run by, and I waved to him. I said, "What's up?" And he hit me with like the generic, like, "I'm all right." And like that's the thing. Like when a guy says, "I'm all right," he is all right. He is all right, but he's not giving you all the details.
Yeah.
So I think some of the ladies hearing some of our behind the scenes, like the way that we're feeling, I think it could help them kind of resonate with some of these quiet dads that are walking around with all this pressure. And it kind of gives them an inside track. Like, all right, you know what? He's probably carrying a lot too. He might not voice it out, but this is tough on him too. So we've really, over the course of the last few weeks so far, we have talked a lot about a lot of different topics. We've talked a lot about parenting in particular, but one of the things I want to get started with is male mental health. I think it's a huge, I know it's a huge problem nationwide, worldwide, I'm sure. I don't know if the United States numbers are a little bit more skewed than the rest of the world when it comes to suicide and like depression amongst males. I would think, yeah, you guys might know better, but I think that the United States numbers are probably higher than others.
I would agree.
Probably based on a lot of different factors, but male mental health really, truly means so much to me. You and I were involved with the Healing Invisible Wounds Foundation, which was created by a military vet. I started on the suicide awareness type stuff that really resonated with me and really hit my heart when it came to military guys. Because when you and I were graduating high school, you had a few different options. They were force feeding you to go to college. You can go find a trade, or you can go to the military. For me, that military option, I was too much of a bitch, for lack of a better word, to sign up, because back then you were going right to war. So when those guys started coming back and they had this post-traumatic stress, I never heard of post-traumatic stress prior to that. Now, these guys are going to Iraq, Afghanistan, and they're coming back, and I had a friend who's still a really good friend of mine who's doing amazing right now, Mikey Corley. But Mikey was able to really give me an inside track onto how the VA was handling these things, the doctors were handling it. So if Mikey's going to be our example, he had a few different ways that things could have went. The way he chose is the best, and he's an amazing dad, and he's probably going to be on here as a guest, and he's currently training with Iron Man, and he's an unbelievable dad. People in my group of friends have been saying that I'm, the dad that they look up to. Well, I told Mikey, like, well, maybe for one time it was me, but like, you're the guy. I'm looking up to you now.
Everybody's got to have an idol.
For sure. So Mikey, when it comes to soldier suicide and everything, he was giving me an inside track. So, they'll pretty much have you go talk to somebody. They're probably going to be real quick to write you a script. A lot of those guys fall into drugs, alcohol, all these other things. What helped Mikey the most was he got a dog. And if you think about it, when you're in your own head and you go from Afghanistan to civilian life, it's kind of just you in your own thoughts and all these crazy memories that you had.
You versus you
but
at that point.
Now you have that dog, and now your dog almost gives you something that, number one, you're responsible for. It gives you a companion. So Mikey was the unicorn there. He knew he had a problem. He knew that, he needed to do something to make him feel better. And he took all the right steps in order to do so for himself, specific to soldiers with post-traumatic stress. Now, that's one area of our crazy depression and suicide, that we currently have right now. And I know it happens with the ladies, but it's not nearly as prevalent. And I've been saying for years that ladies are tougher than guys.
Men
guys
don't manage emotion well.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it's not a cut off.
I feel like as a man, I can say I don't manage my emotions properly. And that's probably why there's a drastic difference in the numbers, like men's suicide to women. And, the rate that's affecting our society is crazy. And I don't mean to sidetrack, but Sunday, it's funny we're talking about this, I did the Lifted for Life Suicide Awareness Drive, which was all trucks. I had a couple friends with exotic cars came out. And we started in Hamilton, came down to Arugas for lunch. There had to be 50 trucks, 15 exotic cars. And we hung the flag right out front of Certified. Everybody came underneath, and it was all the way raised suicide awareness. It's the most prominent thing, in my opinion, at the forefront of our society right now. We're losing people left and right. Now, you're talking about soldiers coming back and struggling. Nate Head, a retired captain in the military, does a thing every year with his Marines. He gets everybody that he served with together, as many people as he can. They choose a location, and everybody gets together for like 4 days just to check on each other, make sure everybody's doing well. You know, a lot of people saw some stuff and didn't manage it well, you know, and especially when you're talking about veterans battling with this, like when we were hooked up with Sergio, you know, he had his struggles, and that was a great cause and really brought it to my eyes. Like you said, we had 2 options or 3 options when we were kids. I have friends that went to war, and it enabled me to live a young asshole-esque lifestyle, you know, and enjoy life. Well, they were getting shot at. I'm taking shots.
Same here.
You know, different kinds of shots. They're getting shot at, and I'm taking shots at the bar.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
And for me to forget about their sacrifices, especially when I'm sitting here today, semi-successful and maybe having an impact on people, I would be selfish on my part. You know, so I'm happy you brought that up.
100%, man. 100%. So, you know, I was saying, like, the ladies, you know, they do seem to really handle life stressors a lot better than the guys do. The guys kind of bottle things up and, you know, find, like we said, drugs, alcohol, something to kind of numb everything for a little while. But it's like, you know, like you're just numbing. You're just numbing everything. So, you know, fast forward from when we were talking about Mikey, that's back in like 2008 that I'm talking about, when he got back from Iraq and Afghanistan and had to do his own personal growth, which back then was streamlined because he had to do it. He had to do it then. Like in 2008, when we were drinking and partying, we didn't have any really situations that were either going to make or break us. We were kind of just, you know, kind of getting to that fork in the road, and we kept going the wrong way for a little while. I know I personally did, but we were talking about last week when I was saying that my dad was there for me every day with those seizures. Well, I went to the doctor. I had a seizure in January, and I was drinking an immense amount of caffeine back then, bro. Slugging coffee. I wasn't getting real good sleep. So the doctor described the January seizure as like the perfect storm was the reason why I had the seizure. Okay, so then I have to go take blood tests. And I don't know if it's because my motor's always running like crazy, but the blood work was not resembling the milligrams of the medication that I was taking, okay? So I think back then it was 750 milligrams per day was what I needed for me to not have a seizure. I'm taking it, 750. I go to get blood work 2 different times, and I diligently took it. I have one of those old people pill things. I got to take it twice a day. Diligently taking it. And then, so the neurologist, no knock on him, but he was like, it's not showing in your blood. Like, we have to give you, I think we went up to 1,000 milligrams or like 1,500 a day. Well, once that happened, Billy, and I started taking more milligrams of this stuff, my mind just got out of control for me. So I went for a run. And I was walking over I was running, and I got to the Parkway overpass, and I envisioned myself climbing up the gate and jumping down on the Parkway. Now, it was just a vision. It's not like it was lingering there. I didn't think about these things all the time, and I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me, but I could tell you guys, if you guys think Positive Pete is out here smiling and everything is absolutely perfect, that is not the case. I'm sure guys have had those thoughts, and I think guys are having these thoughts. They might be a little bit more prevalent than what they're talking about, or maybe they're having these thoughts and they're kind of just lingering. Well, for me, I had those thoughts. I broke down crying. I finished my run, and I came home and I said, F that medicine, I'm not taking it. Well, when you take seizure medication and then you don't take it at all, what happens? Bang, you have a seizure. So 24 hours later, after having these terrible thoughts, now I land on my face in front of my kids, which hurt so bad. My kids watch me leave in an ambulance, not knowing when daddy's coming home. Daddy comes back. 9 stitches in my lip, half a tooth, no driver's license. In that moment, I felt like a piece of shit. So I was at the bottom right there. But the beautiful thing about being that low, down on the bottom of the sea where just the fluke are, the doormats, you got to get that long reel to get them. The beautiful thing about being down that low is that it forces you to find ways to feel better and be better. So along that time, I was just plugging and playing, dude. Plugging and playing as I would. It's not like I can get in the car and just go for a ride. So what I started doing was, thanks to a lot of my friends and whoever I was just like venting to and reaching out to. Like, I remember you guys showing up that day with groceries, you and Zach, dude, I'll never forget that stuff. But my point is, so what I started doing was I would go for a walk. And the walk was way different than the 7-mile run that I was taking at night, because I would go for a run at night. I would run like 5-7 miles. My endorphins are going. I'm sweating. Now I can't sleep. Now I wake up the next morning. I'm feeling tired. I had to slow everything down, bro. I was going for a walk in the morning. It wasn't for exercise, dude. Mental clarity. I'm listening to the birds chirping. I'm closing my eyes, taking deep breath, envisioning my family, envisioning this life that I once pictured when I was a bartender that I never would have thought attainable. Now that same life that I'm living, I'm taking for granted in the same moment. So I would go for walks, and I would just find things that made me feel better. It didn't have to be a warm and cozy 16-hour numbing, like I took mushrooms and I'm just in like this crazy la-la land. No, it was like Kygo Radio, Avicii, these songs that I know I like and I know I feel good. People might make fun of the songs that I like, but they're the ones that I know make me feel good. So that playlist was on every day. I would go for a walk. I would make sure that I would get a workout, make sure my diet was right. And that was when I started opening my mind to cold showers. And I didn't hesitate in the cold shower day one, because I read that it makes you feel better. And what did I need? To feel better. So I didn't even bother with the warm. I went right to cold, and it kind of hurt in the moment, but I felt so mentally clear in that cold shower because I knew that I was going to feel better when it was over. So that was how I was able to get to what I thought was the bottom. I may get down to the bottom again. Things may get low again, but I know that when you're down there, that's the best time to scramble and look for these other solutions. So my point here is, Billy, that you or any of these guys that are feeling like the world is coming down on you, find something each day or each morning. For me, it was that morning window, but find something that you know for you is going to make you feel better. That's not drugs, alcohol, porn, any of these other bad categories that you can get yourself into. Find these things that you know for you. I use coloring books as an example, not to go off on a rant, but
No, go ahead.
There's something about a coloring book. Dude, you sit there, you're not thinking about life stressors. You're just trying to stay in between the lines. So grab yourself a coloring book for 15 minutes. Go to the gym, take a cold shower, go for a walk, put on a fun song. It's your life. We get caught up in other people telling us how to live our current life, or how to live life. I wasn't listening to anybody else tell me what to do back then. A year and a half ago, it was last May. I wasn't listening to anybody else's do this, don't do this, do this, because when you go to the hospital, you're vulnerable at that time. Everybody thinks that they could start telling you how to live life. And what happens there is, Billy, when everyone starts to tell you all these things that you should be doing or can be doing, you start to subconsciously feel like you're not doing shit.
Yeah.
And so I lost sight of all the good that I was doing and all this great platform that I built for myself and all this great foundation and all these beautiful blessings I had around me. I started losing sight of all that stuff. And I started feeling like I'm a friggin' loser, dude. I can't even stay. I would say to myself back then, you can't even stay on your own 2 feet, bro. How are you supposed to support your house? Like, that self-talk.
Yeah, but that's where your network comes into play, right? Like, I know where you were at when that happened. And I also know the outpour of support that you had from so many people. And I think that's probably, and I might be wrong, you have to tell me, we've never discussed this. I think that's probably at that low point in your life when you realized how much you did have in front of you and how many people's lives you have touched. Because I know there were a lot of people that were by your side only because you were by their side. Now, we're talking about dark times and suicidal thoughts or whatever. I don't think there's one person, man or woman, that if they're being honest can say that they've never had a thought like that. Right. Times get tough. Yeah. It's always going to be a thought. And I think if you're going to be honest with yourself, at least for me, and obviously for you, you have to be willing to acknowledge that you've had that dark thought. You've been in a dark place. It's easy to consider killing yourself and what life would be like, what would happen if you did. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I could think about it, but I don't have this is going to sound wrong. I don't have the balls to do it. Like, I would never be able to follow through with that. And I've thought about it, just like I think everybody else has. But I also know that as dark as times could be, there's bright times ahead. Like, we had a week of rain last week.
Miserable.
All that downpouring, dark, stormy weather. It's 82 and sunny out right now.
Isn't that life?
In the middle of October.
I know.
So, yeah, it was real shitty last week.
Yep.
But look at the weather today, and it's the same for life, right?
So true.
I could have fought with my wife. Work could have not been good. My kids could be out of control. Whatever it is that's putting me to that edge, there's no money in the bank account, bills are due, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That's only going to last for today, maybe tomorrow. It's not permanent.
It's true.
Nothing is worth getting that bent out of shape about.
Yeah.
And, you said when you're at the lowest, or what you think is the lowest, you do realize who's actually around for you.
For sure.
Because when it's dark for you and you don't think you're functioning at your fullest capacity, you're now not benefiting people that are only around you for their benefit, right? So you needed somebody to come over and say, Pete, we're going to get through this together. You didn't need anybody to give you advice at that moment, but you just might needed to just see somebody that was genuine and cared about you.
Yep.
And you got that. And I've gotten that a million times. When I came home from the hospital, you were at my house within like 3 hours of me getting home. That's the shit that you need. And I think that's what a lot of people are lacking, is the ability to have that conversation. Now, I remember flying to the food store with Zach, coming to your house, making sure Abby was good, making sure you were good. And I just sat there all day. We didn't have to say a word to each other just to make sure you were cool. Mm-hmm. Being able to be there for you, just like you were there for me, meant the world to me.
Exactly.
And seeing you pick yourself up, it hammers it home for everybody listening to your story.
Yeah.
They could do the same thing.
Absolutely. And there's really something to be said about those moments, because one of the biggest things, I probably lacked like self-confidence. Like I used to tell you all the time, like, stop gassing me up, some of these things. But like,
it wasn't gassing you up though.
No,
I was telling you the truth that you didn't see
right.
in yourself.
Exactly, which is my point. And I'm still a work in progress. I'm still trying to get there. I don't want to ever come across as like cocky and arrogant. But what I learned in those moments, between the hospital, between needing all these help from all these other people, having to get driven around by my dad as a grown-up, dude. Like I felt like I was freaking 16 again, like asking my parents for a ride, But in those moments with a lot of that self-talk came a lot of self-awareness. So we live in this comparison world where it's so easy to compare yourself to somebody else's life, like we've talked about in the past, and it's so easy to get caught in there. But when you're in these down moments and in these bad moments that you're trying to find some answers, and sometimes those answers are right in front of you. So what I started to realize in those moments was, okay, what makes me different as a person than everybody else? We're all different. I think there's like 8 billion people on the planet. We're
Sounds
all
right.
different in our own ways. Well, I started to acknowledge and address these things that make me different. How am I different? I'm really caring. I'm really compassionate. I have a lot of enthusiasm. I like to make others feel better. Okay, well, that's me. I can make a whole list of the cons too, but what makes me different? I was saying, like, all because you're not the cup of tea for somebody else, it doesn't mean that you change your brew.
Yeah.
Now, I know that I can get better in areas of life, and I know that I will continue to be on a trajectory of self-improvement, but who I am at the core and in my stomach, I will never change, because that's who I am. And if I start going on a different path that I know is really not who I am at the core, I'm not going to feel fulfilled.
Well, that's also you being like really aware of you, right? So we talked about struggles and how you felt at a dark time, but that stuff stays with you and made you who you are today, right?
For
so
sure.
I know for me, stuff like that makes me grateful for every day that I'm upright or every day that I have with my father. So like you being at that low point made you realize the positives that you have.
Yeah.
And sure, there's negatives that you can work on and improve on, but be thankful for what's going right and what you are providing to yourself, your wife, your children, the community. I mean, you impact so many lives on a daily basis. And, you know, listen, I'm not saying we're changing the world, but we're impacting our community in one way, shape, or form. And you're at the forefront, we've said it before, of many conversations, as am I, but in different capacities. You brought me out of my shell to be able to talk to people to help them.
Good. It didn't take much, bro.
No, but I'll engage a stranger. Just like, you know, like I saw somebody the other day on Facebook who did post something that was kind of like dark. And I just hit him with a message, you know, you good? And now I texted him because I did have their phone number, somebody that I haven't talked to in a while. And we had a full conversation about life and what he was going through. And he's, you know, going through it with his wife, and he's just not happy with where things are. And I'm not saying I gave him answers. I had no answers to give him. I don't know his story. I don't know his life. But I gave him an outlet just to chat and unburden himself.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that person just to reach out. For that moment, you just need to get something off your chest.
Absolutely.
And I've seen you do that time and time again to people.
Yeah.
And I'm able to do that now. I got some confidence to do it.
Yeah, so in those moments that I started sharing my journey a little bit last year, when I started telling people like the struggles that I had been going through mentally, the amount of people that was hitting my DMs about their own personal struggles, I mean, some of them to the point that they were so lengthy that I said, like, listen, I could help you like a little bit, but you need like more help than like what I have to offer. So I couldn't believe it, dude. And like when I shared my story, so many people had relatable stories to me, which something clicked in my mind there where that was when I really started saying, so we were talking about suicide, all these other things that like I've seen, heard about. I see the numbers. What is it, like every 12 seconds or something? Like someone commits suicide?
Something similar
like
to that.
Ridiculous like that. So I knew about all that stuff. And then to be able to have people reach out to me personally that they were going through this, well, number one, I was like, damn, well, I'm not in this alone. And number two, I was like, people are struggling. So, you know, in their own ways. And like none of them were the same either. Like everybody's story is different. Everyone's story was a little bit different like we talked about in the past. But the unique part about you and I is that we have both been in the hospital over the course of the last 15 months. So we talked about, you know, when I went into the hospital and when I got home. Prior to me going into the hospital, I was putting myself in a little bit of a island or a competition against my wife. And what I mean by that is I started to say, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I was almost keeping score against her without saying that I was keeping score against her, which is, I'm not proud of that. I don't want to ever feel like a competition. But my point is, I was at the bottom. I felt terrible. When you're at the bottom and all those people start scrambling, you know what started happening in my mind? I started looking around and I'm going, holy shit, look at how much Abby's doing. Look at how much Abby does every day. So I stopped keeping score. I stopped, you know, saying, oh, well, I did this, I did that. And I started watching what she does. And I think that you probably had that same appreciation for Mary when those moments went on, because when you came home and you were out of the hospital and you came back home, you didn't come back home at 100% capacity. You couldn't come back home and run the way that you're probably now running like you were prior to that. But you then got to see things in a slightly different lens. So there's a blessing behind those down moments. There's a blessing that, damn, these chicks that chose us, that we chose them, there's a reason behind that. There's a balancing act here. We are a damn team. And when I was at Johnson & Wales in 2008, we had a really good team. And I would walk into a gym and we just had this confidence. Well, I got my team back. I got my confidence back. Now my team walks into Target and it's the 5 of us. We're freaking confident, man.
The Reillys have arrived.
The Reillys are here, baby. We're confident. We know we're not perfect. We know we're going to give max effort, but this is who we are. And I friggin' love that this is who we are.
So I think a lot of that comes down to, again, balance, right? So Abby balances you out. So, there's a saying that a good woman can make a bad man good, and a bad woman could ruin a good man. So you find balance in your partner, and being able to realize what they're also bringing to the table without keeping score is very important. Now, I think everybody can say that they are guilty at times of feeling like they're doing more than their share or whatever, but you got to have that second to sit back, focus, and say, what is it? I have a strong partner. I can lean on them. I can rely on them. And that will ultimately help get you out of a rut you're in, know. So I could reach out to you or you could reach out to me at a dark time, but when push comes to shove, I'm not laying in bed next to you at night holding your hand, telling you everything's going to be okay while you're sitting there maybe in tears, maybe having thoughts of whatever and not really happy with where you're at. I'm not there for you, Abby.
Right.
You're not there for me.
Exactly.
So you need to have that crutch or that rock that can step up in those moments of true weakness. Mm-hmm. Now I'll stand here and I will admit there are times as a father, as a husband, as a businessman or entrepreneur that I get really low. Like, the highs are high and the lows are really lows. We talked about climbing that mountain. When I hit that first rest point, after climbing half of a mountain, and you're just sitting there and you're thinking, all the things that could go wrong, how far you've come and how far you still have to go. It's scary, especially when you think you're taking that journey alone.
We were talking about the weather, and it was raining for all those days. Without the storms, we wouldn't appreciate the sunshine.
100%.
So without me going through what I went through, how would things look for me currently? Because I was telling you, I was keeping tally. I felt like I was on this island by myself. I was in my own head, in my own thoughts. If I didn't smash my face on the floor and have to have a strong reality, and I never had that seizure, where would I be today? How would I be feeling? Like, where would I, where would my mental stuff be? Like, my point is, I'm grateful for the storm because now I can appreciate the sunshine more than ever.
Well, you have to enjoy, you can't enjoy the storm, but you have to appreciate it, right? Because it makes everything so much more meaningful. Everybody has a dark time, but that leads up to a great moment as well. Dark times don't last, and there's always going to be that hint of sunshine coming through to give you a glimmer of hope. You just got to look for it, right? So if it's pouring out and it takes a 30-second break and the skies, the clouds dissipate and you get a little ray of sunshine, it's just enough to hook you to hope, right? And you got to look for that ray of sunshine in life. And I'll be honest, I have a difficult time doing that. I'm a very realist. I'm in the moment. This is what it is. This is where we're at. It's fucking pouring now. It's going to pour forever.
Yeah.
But I've been really conscious of making that effort to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm usually hoping it's not a freight train coming through and it's just natural sunlight. But without the storm, the good times aren't enjoyable. They're not even good at that point. If you don't know how bad things could get, you also can't experience how good things are.
Exactly.
So you have to have that struggle. You have to be able to say, things got better. If you never had the struggle, things never could get better.
It's true. As I kind of look back on my whole life, like, it's really just been a perseverance thing. Like, everything for me has been perseverance. And so I shouldn't be surprised now that I'm adult that I still have to find these things to persevere through. And I'm grateful for the sport of wrestling to, give me some of that thicker skin and the ability to persevere and overcome down times. But the reason why I brought this topic up was I want to let the people know where my mind has been in the past, and to let you know that if you are having these thoughts frequently, you've had them before, like, it's it seems to be, you keep saying it's like a natural thing. I don't know
I
where the
think it
science
is.
goes on it. I don't know if that's 2023 world, if everything is more magnified now. Like, did our genetics always have these things for males that would be like, oh, maybe the world's a little bit better without me, or it's too difficult, or I don't know if it's a now thing, but if you are going through depression, anxiety, having some of these terrible thoughts, I just beg you to just take action, to find something, even if it's just for a moment, like Billy said, even if it's just for a moment, just find something that you know is going to make you feel better. And maybe you could even find something like, that's why I was telling you before we started why I'm so excited about the wrestling club, because I was downplaying that for a long time. And now I'm like, you know what? All the things that I described myself as, I have the ability now that I could share that with so many different people. We had an instance where Abby knows the bus driver on a bus that rides some football players that were making some trouble on the bus. Well, Abby name dropped Coach Pete to the bus driver. Well, the bus driver was venting to Abby, and Abby recognized some of the names. And once we knew that they were on the football team, I said, you better tell those kids, you better name drop Coach Pete. So she name dropped this morning. I'm going to see them at practice. And I said to Abby, I'm like, yeah, I choose to be kind. I choose to be nice, but it doesn't mean I can't get intense when I need to. So I'll give them a little bit of hard truth today, but she planted the seed. So, hey, guys, you never know. Who knows anybody? The world gets smaller and smaller as we get older.
Yeah.
So you better be doing the right things, not acting like a little shit on the bus, because if you are, someone's going to find out. So I'm interested to see how everything plays out. Abby and I pretty much know how this is going to play out.
I'm sure they're
She
anticipating
already said,
it.
yeah. So like today I'll be all right. I'll just be more like, hey, I know, but it's going to be more like, the bus driver knows me. She has my phone number. I hear one thing, she's going to contact me. So just be ready for that, bro.
Yeah.
So it was pretty wild to have that conversation this morning and have something that's just real life right there. It's like,
So now you touched on something just telling that story, right? So the bus driver can reach out to you at any point to balance out her bus. Maybe, hopefully you can help.
I hope so.
I hope that there's people watching this that, whether they have my phone number or they have me on Instagram or Facebook, shoot me an email if you got a struggle. Shoot Pete an email, a message, whatever it is. I'm not telling you we got answers, but we're willing to listen and talk, and maybe we could help you, like Pete could help the bus driver, you know? I know myself with mental health struggles, especially, there are some great groups that can provide assets. I've set a couple people up that were struggling with substance abuse as well as just strictly mental health issues with a local group, CFC Loud and Clear. Danny Regan is a really good friend of mine. We've always supported him and his organization. They have a great substance abuse program as well as a great aftercare and mental health program. They bring a lot of support and a lot of tools to the table. So just focusing on that. If anybody's having struggles, like Pete said, with depression or whatever, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now, I'm not going to say that suicidal thoughts are commonplace or the norm, but I think it happens to everybody. I think everybody finds that dark moment, and it's prevalent, and I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm glad you opened up for me to mention that just by saying that the bus driver has access to you for maybe a little support on the bus. But we're here to support everybody in whatever way, shape, or form. And I hope that comes out through this.
Can you guys raise your hand if you've ever had a suicidal thought in your life? I think it's a lot more prevalent than people are talking about. And if the numbers, if the factual data of every 12 seconds or 11 seconds, whatever it may be, if that doesn't say it enough, then I think we just got a little bit more clarity just now. And, but guys, we got this, and we got this together. Don't do what I did and put yourself on an island. Okay? Because last week we were talking about being on a deflated raft with one oar and then connecting with all these other rafts.
Let's tie our rafts together.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Billy and I were wondering how frequently we should do this. I spoke to my sister recently about how much we should do this. We were talking therapy. I told her about how when I went to a therapist when I was feeling down, the therapist told me to join AA to be a part of a group.
Yeah.
But my point is that this is acting as therapy for Billy and I to be able to share some of our stories, but also kind of voice out some of these things that we're feeling on a daily basis. And we said in the beginning, if we could help one person, this is a win. And when we shared the first video out of Leaks Fitness, at least 3 people have contacted Billy since then. So together we are better. If you guys are struggling, you're not alone.
Let's go, guys. We got this all together, like Pete said. Let's put our helmets on with our little lights and band together.